everyone! Welcome to another Spoilercast. It's the Mandalorian Spoilercast. I'm Captain Logan, and joining me this evening is our good friend...
Cap, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Oh. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Good. It's weird. It's always something. Anyway, look, it's Dan Torrey!
Hi, everybody.
What's happening? We're a little bit late to the Mandalorian party. This was a thing that, of course, people wanted us to talk about and that I was hoping we could get to, but Dan's been really super busy, and I didn't really want to talk about this by myself, because, like, I have some stuff to say, but one of the things I really like about the show, Dan, is that it's so straightforward that, like, there's some analysis to be done, but it's really straightforward. I kind of just want to watch it, you know? It's hard to get real excited about just, like, sitting in front of a camera and talking about it, so I'm glad that Dan was available and able to hang out and talk with me, because I think this conversation will be a lot more fun as a conversation.
Yeah, I think so too, and I tend to agree with your general assessment that it's pretty straightforward, and I think refreshingly so.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
I think we'll get into, yeah.
It's one of the big words that I would use to describe the show as refreshing. It feels like it's filling a niche, you know? There's nothing like this on. And not just that there's nothing like Star Wars on.
Star Wars! Yeah. And it's popular.
Yeah, and that's not, I don't mean it's not, there's not enough like space opera on, although there's certainly not enough like fun space opera that I can sit down and watch with my kids. That's a thing I really like about this show. Anyway, I got a lot of we got a lot of things to jump into with this. So folks, thanks a bunch for tuning in. If you're watching live, hi there. I see a lot of folks in the comments already. And if you guys have anything specific about the show that you want to ask us about or make sure that we cover, leave comments as we go along. Dan and I we're not always the best at this. We're going to do our best to let you guys mostly direct the conversation. We're going to start off as we always do with kind of a best thing, worst thing, and just our general thoughts about the show. And then my plan, anyway, Dan, is to launch into comments and just use that to direct the conversation. We're going to try not to go much longer than an hour tonight, so whatever we can cover within that time frame is what we will do. And so while we are giving our initial thoughts, 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of this, guys, feel free to start leaving your comments and just major swaths of things you want to make sure and cover, or even details and things, anything and everything about this show that you really want to make sure that we discuss. Make sure you leave in the comments. So we're gonna let Dan open us right up here. And Dan, is this show the best thing since sliced bread, like a lot of people are acting like it is? Are you in the camp of it's okay, but it ain't that great? Or do you land somewhere in the middle like I do and give us a best thing, worst thing?
So, like, going into the show, the Mandalorians are, like, my favorite thing about Star Wars. Boba Fett has always been my favorite Star Wars character.
So you got a high bar for this.
Very excited about. Yeah, I was very, very excited for the show. So I'd always wanted them to make something in live action that delved into the culture and the history of the Mandalorians, because in the expanded universe they have a lot of like cool backstory in the books and the games and in the comics and all that. So I've always really liked them, and I think the show. Okay, so my best thing is the first 3 episodes of the show and episodes 7 and 8 of the show, yes. So the beginning of the season and the end are really, really good, really solid, I think, storytelling Star Wars material. And the worst thing is the middle chunk of the season, because I think it's filler and not the best. So I think this show is overall really enjoyable. I quite like it. And I'm definitely looking forward to where season 2 goes based on... We'll talk about like the lore stuff that they sort of introduce later on in the season, and I guess from the first episode where we get Baby Yoda, because the origin and nature of Yoda's species has always been such a mystery. They've never delved into it in the EU at George Lucas's request, because he wanted to keep them mysterious. So it's cool that we're like, as an EU fan, that we're kind of like going to get to delve into that stuff in the second season, which should be interesting. But yeah, I'm not like over the moon about the show, but I quite like it.
Yeah, I'm in very much the same place, and I think my best thing, worst thing is kind of sort of the same as you, Dan. Like, I don't know, I went back and watched this a second time. I don't know if you had a chance to do that.
I did not get a chance to. I wish I did, but...
Episodes 4 and 5, I appreciated a lot more on a second viewing to get a read on how they fit into the grander narrative. They felt a little bit more necessary than I thought they did first time around, and I appreciated a couple of plot points that didn't hit me the way they did the second time. That 6th episode on the space station with the kind of gruff mercenaries that are all at each other's throats, I have not been able to get through that without falling asleep yet. I keep trying. I've tried it 3 times now. I've watched the whole show twice. This is the 3rd time I've attempted watching that episode without falling asleep. It's really strange because there's a lot of stuff I kind of like about it, and yet it just kind of drags. It's weirdly, it just kind of sits there. Like, it doesn't have quite enough story for even the, 35, 40 minutes that episode is.
Yeah, I think that episode is... It also suffers from some of the worst acting in the series too. The woman who plays the Twi'lek in that episode is awful. Like, she's just like flicking her tongue around and licking her lips. Like, if she had a mustache, she'd be twirling it. Did
you have what I had? That, and I didn't feel this way about anything else the entire season. That episode, and again, there's stuff I like about it. There's lines I like a lot. We got Detective Flash from Batman Begins. I thought he was great, but the issue, he's the guy that sends them on the ship in the first place. I thought he was really good, but the issue I have with it is it felt, the way it was directed, the way it was acted for the most part, like a fan film. None of the rest of this feels like that, but that episode was really fan filmy. And that woman you're talking about felt like a fan film casting to me.
Yeah, and I thought Clancy Brown was pretty bad in the episode too.
He's not great
as the big Deveronian guy. I thought he was really, really hammy. Not as bad as the woman. And I was really disappointed that it seems like we're going to be bringing those characters back in a future episode, because
it watched like a thing they expected to be a fan favorite, right? Because it's trying to do some world building and it's showing you other mercenaries, and so it's like opening up the curtain of that world of the
and you even get to see
bounty
like
hunters.
The Republic prison, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like, the first time we've ever seen anything to do with the New Republic in this new canon so far.
And what's here, I said there's other things I like about that episode. This was supposed to be general thoughts, but I guess now we're just into that 6th episode. But I thought that some of the most intricate and impressive action was in that episode. But there's a hallway thing toward the beginning with where the Mandalorian takes down. I can't remember if it was stormtroopers or droids or what, but that was really impressive. Where like there's that guy. There's that guy that. Yeah, there's that guy that's with them that's not impressed with the Mandalorian yet and doesn't think he has very impressive skills, and I think that's kind of the first time we see him go to town like that, the way he does in that scene, and he like he uses that line he shoots out. He does like crazy cool stuff, and like that was fun.
It was really cool, and I have to say, like, the other like minor thing I really enjoyed about that episode was Bill Burr plays the human character in that episode, and he's a famous comedian I really like. He's a Boston local, so it was cool to see him in a Star Wars thing, especially since he's not like a big Star Wars fan. He like knows Favreau because he was on his like cooking show, and he like asked him at a party to be in Star Wars. And he was
have to watch that. I didn't even know that cooking show existed until today. I saw that it was on Netflix, and I was like, oh, I should watch that.
Yeah, apparently it's pretty cool.
There's a whole episode with Avengers alum where they got Robert Downey and they got Spider-Man Kid and they got the Russos, and I was like, awesome. I'm gonna have to look at that.
That's super cool. Yeah. So I think the worst episode by far, in my opinion, is the one on Tatooine, because it's just like nostalgia stuff from A New Hope for a lot of the episode that I didn't really need.
And episode 1, weirdly, because it's got pit droids.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think those 2 episodes are definitely the worst of them. I agree with you that 4 is a little less bad.
I don't think 4 is bad at all. It's a little typical for it's a very. I've seen that Star Trek episode like 5 times.
Yeah, and it's exactly the plot of Seven Samurai. I think it's one of the Kurosawa movies.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
It walks a line between homage and derivative and borrowing stuff and being too derivative, right?
Yeah, which is very Star Wars. I mean, like, I like that it's borrowing and looking at the stuff that inspired Star Wars. You can tell, like, the people that made the show, like, really know the things that inspired George Lucas and, like, what about them, made it into Star Wars that resonates with people. So I really liked that. I also really like generally about this show that it avoids one of the main problems of the sequel trilogy in that the heroes do not seem invincible in this show.
Yeah.
And in fact are proven not to be many, many times.
That's right.
Like the Mandalorian is a very skilled character, and is good at fighting, and obviously he lives a warrior creed and all that. But he lives in a very dangerous world in this show, and like he gets messed up by people, and like almost doesn't make it out of situations many times.
In that last episode, I've got that split second where it kind of dupes me into thinking it's possible they'll kill him off, and then the title, The Mandalorian, will just be different Mandalorians each season. Yeah. I had that thought for a second. When he takes his helmet off, I was like, well, I figured at some point maybe we would do that. I appreciated that it took that long, and that there's a real character arc that leads us there. But I was thinking, I could see this going either way. I could see Favreau going as soon as he takes his helmet off, we kill him, and somebody else comes in.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, in terms of, like, the stakes of the show. I really liked the Ugnaught character that Nick Nolte voices in, I think his first episode is the second one, right? Where he has to like bring peace to the valley.
Queel.
And he confronts the Jawas and stuff. Yeah. That's the I Have Spoken guy, which has become a meme.
I knew that was going to be a meme as soon as you said it. You didn't even have to say it a second time. I was like, that's going to be a thing. It's going to keep coming up. It's going to be because I don't know. It felt classic. That guy is immediately a classic character that feels like
Star Wars-y character.
Especially, he feels like, and there's a few of those in this show. We'll start getting to comments here in a second, because obviously that guy is going to come up. But like, since you mentioned it, I guess I'll just say he felt like a guy, like one of those characters that we all grew up with, even though we didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
exactly. I love stuff like that. They're trying to do that with the lady mercenary, and she's fine, but I don't think she's in that same league.
Yeah, I don't think the actress playing her is good enough to like carry, like be a main supporting character on the show. I mean, maybe
which
like
is so impressive because the other guy is part puppet.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think like the is it Gina Carano that plays her? I don't know. I think she's either a wrestler or a professional fighter of some kind.
I assumed she was a wrestler. She had that build.
Yeah, and she's like I think she like physically fits the role. Like you would want a Rebel Commando to look like that. But I just wasn't as impressed with the performance. Not that it was bad. It was just kind of like flat for me.
Yeah, when you say you're not sold on that, I'm wondering if you have that thing that I occasionally do in the show, and this is a real tough thing to peg. Like it's really easy to try to come back and make an old thing authentic again and feel modern enough for a modern audience, but still what it was. She doesn't quite feel like she fits in Star Wars. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means, but like I don't know, something about that performance. It's not quite of the world, and I liked it better second viewing, but.
Yeah, I mean, it could be potentially interesting to delve more into her character and like see ideologically why she didn't stick around with the New Republic after the rebellion.
I thought on paper everything about the character was pretty good, actually, and I like her in comparison to Queel specifically because they're both on opposite sides of the war, but Queel kind of had no choice. What's he going to do? And it's really easy for her to be kind of holier than thou, like, well, I was on the right side, and he's like, I was a slave. What do you do? And
yeah, exactly.
So in putting those characters together, that was really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't expect them to bring back all of the supporting characters that they had in the one-off episodes in the sort of two finale episodes, which I did like, because at the outset, especially in the Queel episode, the thing I loved about that episode is because it was structured and paced exactly like an old spaghetti western. Like the cowboy man with no name hero wanders into town, sees like some sort of injustice, takes care of it, and then leaves the valley in peace and then moves on. Like that's the plot of a lot of old western movies. And of course the underworld, seedy underbelly side of the Star Wars universe is very much inspired by American westerns. So that's the perfect thing to bring into this show. So I liked that. the way they use the supporting characters at the outset and then bringing them back at the end, I think gave a real emotional punch at the end of the season, like especially when Quill ends up dying. Like that was one of the most emotionally affecting moments in the whole season for me.
Yeah, hurt my
It
feelings.
was really tense. Yeah, really tense when like the Imperials were chasing him too. Like it was great stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason that it feels to me like it's filling a void, right? Because so much of dramatic television right now, in especially streaming stuff, is starting to get into this unfortunate formula of it's named after or pretending like it's about a singular character, but immediately it's got to be an ensemble cast thing. And I really appreciate that this show does not fall into that trap. So all of these characters that do come back, not only could they all have been one-off and never return, and not only do we have no idea who's going to make it out and not because we didn't even expect to see him again, everybody's expendable in this. Maybe even the Mandalorian, although by the second season I don't think that's going to be the case. But for a second I thought even he might be expendable. But the bigger thing for me is It is his show, and they really do just serve his story, and
yes,
that's really nice. Not everybody has to have a subplot, and this show, even though it's got those episodes in the middle that you and I are both saying are a little bit disposable, and for me, like I'm kind of okay with one-off episodes in a thing like this. I just didn't like them as much as the other episodes. They didn't win me over on the one-off stories. So like I want those maybe, but I just didn't like those as well. But it's really nice that it's able to do those, but it's, even though we didn't like them as well, but it's not padding in the mythology episodes. It's not padding, even if you think some of that stuff is kind of padded, it doesn't have that Discovery problem and that Picard problem of we've decided it's going to be X number of episodes and we're just going to kind of stall out until we get to the big reveals. Like, this isn't about plot twists. This is not a plot twisty show. This is a real classic adventure thing. And so there are surprises along the way, but it's not just plotting toward those. And so they feel more organically arrived to. And that's just missing right now. As is the shorter format stuff. Eric and I have been saying forever that more shows need to do the Amazon Tick thing and allow themselves to be half an hour if that's all they've got for an episode. And this show oscillates between 30 and 45 minutes. I think the last one is like 49 because it just had more to do there. More dramas need to allow themselves to be shorter like this, because I think that helped the show be a great deal more effective.
Yeah, and I tend to, I mean, maybe if I went through and watched it through again, I'd be more okay with them. But I think in terms of like the general plotting of the show, my issue with the middle episodes was kind of like, I thought the story about what the Imperials wanted to do with the child to be so intriguing because I'm a Star Wars nerd and I want to know like where Yoda's species comes from and like what plans the Empire has, the Fallen Empire has for this kid. And then like we get like 3 episodes of not anything to do with that, and then it just seemed like distraction to me in terms of like the plot that I was interested in moving forward. But I do think that there are some great character moments in between that are needed in order to carry the Mandalorian's character arc forward and be complete by the end of the season too. Yep. So you can't completely take them out. Especially the episode with Cara Dune where we have that thing he has with the woman where she almost takes off his helmet and stuff. That's like good foreshadowing for what happens later, you know, with the IG-88 droid, which is great. But yeah,
you have a double cross in the episode with the lady from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes.
Ming
Na Wen is the actress.
That's her name. Yeah. I couldn't remember her name, and I thought I liked that one better this time around because it's a nice setup and almost fake out in a way for what happens with what's his face, Apollo Creed's character
Carl Weathers.
Carl Withers, yeah, because
I don't remember the character's name.
That's one issue I have with the show is names are not sticking with me. But Anyway, so but like at least the characters are like more complex and interesting than they were in Rogue One. Like Rogue One, I could remember the names better, but well, that's not true either. I also could remember them. But anyway, but
I remember the Borgulets, but I couldn't remember any of the supporting characters.
You get to the you get to the end, and you're fully expecting him to double cross Mando. And in fact, he planned to double cross Mando and got saved by the kid and felt differently about it. But I think that all plays a lot better when you have the kid that is wet behind the ears and trying really hard to get into the guild and double crosses Mando, and you didn't expect that. And then later the guy you think is going to double cross doesn't. So like that's better when you have all of it together. I was glad that was in there.
Yeah, and I like that the Bounty Hunter Guild is so exactly what it is in the EU stuff. Like everyone's just backstabbing, double crossing each other.
I was gonna ask you how close they actually got to old Mandalorian mythology, because people had complained that they wiped away a lot of that even before the Disney reboot in EU.
Yeah, there's a lot of like
Clone Wars
retconning stuff with Clone Wars and some of the novels and stuff. This actually uses a lot of the lore from Clone Wars. The Clone Wars, what it did was like, it didn't get rid of like the warrior honor culture that we had always known from the expanded universe. It just said that like a pacifist faction had come to power and was ruling Mandalore, and like the old way, the people that followed the old ways were like fighting against them, and they were allied with the Separatists. And there was like a whole arc about that. And it also retconned some other things that people weren't, like their home world and stuff like that, which people weren't that happy with initially. I like the stuff in Clone Wars as well as the stuff in the old EU, so I'm not like mad about it or anything. Actually, one of the things that happens in the last episode is wicked cool because of Clone Wars. Like when Moff Gideon uses the Dark Saber to get out of his TIE fighter, you're just like, oh my god, like the Dark Saber in live action.
I was going to ask you about that because I didn't know what that was. I was even not totally sure it was a lightsaber because it looks like it's a piece of metal that's got energy around it. And I was like, what is that?
So what it is...
But I figured that must be some kind of reveal because we hadn't had a lightsaber the entire show and people don't even know what Jedi are.
Exactly. So in Clone Wars, the Dark Saber is an ancient lightsaber created by a Jedi named Tar Vizsla. He was the first Mandalorian to ever join the Jedi Order, and he eventually left and then became Mandalore, united all the clans and all that stuff, and his lightsaber became a relic of House Vizsla, which are the people that led the Separatist movement in Clone Wars. So like their leader uses it, and then eventually their leader fights Darth Maul, and Darth Maul claims the Darksaber and becomes leader of the Mandalorians in one of the seasons.
I didn't know that.
So like we're dealing with this weapon that has been in the hands of like very famous Mandalorians. In fact, the Mandalorian that Favreau voiced in Clone Wars is the guy who uses it, which is really cool. So that character used it, Darth Maul used it, and now this Imperial Moff guy years later has it. It's just like, how is he connected to the Mandalorians or even the Sith or the Jedi? Like, what's going on here? That's like, that was super cool to see that.
Who is, by the way, maybe immediately my favorite bad guy in Star Wars now. He's
great.
He's so great. Well, and I'm a big fan of that actor. That's Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, and it's my favorite character in that show. And Gus Fring was already one of my favorite bad guys in anything. And so that he shows up in this, and he's so over the top and mustached. Really, that speech he has in 8 was killer, man. When he shows up and just immediately knows everything about everyone involved, you're like, oh no, we're in trouble now. And then when he breaks down and goes, yeah, no, you can't trust me, and at the first chance I'm gonna kill you. And this is after we know he's already murdered like 20 of his minions for no reason off screen. We're just told that.
Yeah, he's great.
So good.
That scene is really cool too. I don't know if you saw online, this was like a big thing that blew up in the Star Wars fan community when they were filming it, but for that scene they actually didn't have enough Stormtrooper costumes, so they called in the 501st Legion to like fill in the places.
You know, I didn't know that, but I would have bet you money that's what happened, because I immediately I know I've known some of those guys. Like, I'm not saying that I could tell looking at the outfits that it was 501st, but with as many as were on screen, I was like, there's no way they have that many. They had to have gone to fight like that. I had that thought watching it. They must have gone to 501st.
Yeah, which is like super cool. I mean, I think that kind of stuff goes a long way to like, you know, engender the support of the fan base when you get them directly involved in the filming of the show. That was like, super
absolutely, yeah. And Star Trek's got some precedent for that too. I'm glad to see Wars doing that, especially because Wars has always had a way better like relationship with its fans than Paramount and Star Trek has.
Yeah, George Lucas used to encourage people to make fan films. I mean, that will probably end now that Disney's corporate lawyers have their hands on the IP.
Still can't be as corporate and awful about it as Paramount is with Star Trek.
Yeah,
like it's not possible. They won't let you make anything longer than 15 minutes now. It can't have the word Star Trek in it, and there's all these insane rules now. After what happened with a major one from a few years ago that is still being worked on apparently. But anyway,
these companies don't realize that that this kind of activity is what keeps their brands alive. You know?
That's right. I mean,
anyway,
with that particular case, they were actually kind of in the right about it, but the way they overcompensated was insane. So anyway,
yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and start with some questions, shall we? We're already almost 25 minutes in. That has nothing to do with start. With start with. Damn fine cup of coffee. Would you like to see any original trilogy characters in season 2?
Like main characters? I mean, I don't know how that would be possible.
I would think just anybody at all is probably what they're saying. Like anybody that was a droid or a puppet, you can get away with pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could bring in Boba Fett if you want to confirm he escaped the Sarlacc pit. That's something that people were speculating that was going to happen, because I guess I don't remember off the top of my head, but I guess that there was a mysterious character at the end of the 5th episode that you just saw their like boots or something. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people were speculating that was going to be Boba Fett.
They pull something off of Mono Wing's body or something. Like we're not sure what they were doing. They just lean over her corpse.
And that was never picked up on again. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's someone. I would rather see older versions in live action of some of the younger Mandalorians we've seen in the animated shows. Like I think seeing Sabine from Rebels would be cool.
And there's precedent now for that with Rogue One. Like this would be a good place to do that, because that felt like such an EU project.
Yeah, like I'd like to see what's her name? Bo-Katan Kryze. Maybe she'd be too old at this point.
Well, and I was going to ask you about some even older characters, like what? Because I haven't watched much of Clone Wars. What is Maul's ultimate fate? Is he still kicking around somewhere? Could you see a 60, 70-year-old Maul? Like,
yeah, in Rebels he shows up and he's super old.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't finish that show.
In Rebels, he shows up and he's living on Malachor 5, which is really cool because it's one of the planets from Knights of the Old Republic 2. And he finds Ezra and is going to like train him in the dark side and stuff. And then Maul eventually finds Obi-Wan on Tatooine, and they have like a final duel, and Obi-Wan kills him. And Maul dies.
So he's dead.
It's really cool.
But even if he wasn't, he'd be super ancient at this point, because this is like another 30 years even after that, right?
Yeah, I mean, like Sith, you know, of course, like, you know, space magic. The dark side of the Force can keep you alive for a long time. Especially, I mean, Darth Maul survived getting cut in half, so like
that's true. Maul, he could just be a head on a robot. He could be like a spindly leg guy. Yeah. He could have a Grievous thing going on, right? Where like he's mostly machine. No, that's true. Anything could happen.
And this is the reason why like the people that say Maul is going to be in the Obi-Wan show like don't know what they're talking about unless they decanonize Rebels, because it would like Maul's not supposed to know where Obi-Wan is before he meets him in that show. So like to have Obi-Wan at a younger point in his life meet Maul again, like before that would make sense.
So you're saying even though he got killed, it would almost be less silly if he showed up in this show somehow than if he showed up in that.
Yes, that's true.
Because they could just contrive something he's alive like they've done before, and
I mean,
you probably
like,
don't want that, but they could.
He definitively dies in Rebels. Like it's a very it's a great moment. I don't think they should do it.
He looked pretty definitively dead even in episode 1. Okay,
but we get like a good like character death for him, where he's not just like Ray Park and makeup as a way to show off the new lightsaber props they made. Like the you know what I mean?
So if I had to make a wager for characters that are most likely to show up, boy. I'm just thinking of like offshoots and related characters, like some kind of Hutt, right? Like we will see a Hutt.
Yeah,
I bet.
I would. We've already seen Trandoshans in the show too, which are the race of Bosk, who's one of the bounty hunters from Empire. So, I don't know in canon like what Bosk is doing at this, like, what happened to him. I'm
again,
just not privy to, like, in the current canon what his disposition is post Return of the Jedi, but like I wouldn't be surprised if we saw people that were more analogs for the Empire Strikes Back bounty hunters, like we got with the IG-88 assassin droid in here. I forget which number he is, but he looks exactly like IG-88.
I apologize. I keep thinking this is later than it is. This is pretty shortly after 6, so no, he wouldn't be that much older. We could just see him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I wasn't even thinking that. I said he's elderly. Now, he wouldn't be. He'd only be a few years older than the last time we saw him.
Yeah.
If that.
So I'm trying to... Yeah, I mean, do we know what happened to, like, Aura Singh, like, in current canon, what's going on with her? Maybe she'd come around or something.
And I would love that, because I like that. I've always liked the design of that character a lot. I want to be an Aura Singh fan. I don't know anything about that character, but I've always said that.
She got some cool stuff in Clone Wars.
I watched one of her episodes and wasn't real impressed, but I need to go back to it at some point. I don't know. People always point me to episodes of Clone Wars they say is great, and I try them, and I'm like, I'm not feeling it. I just cannot get into that show. I keep trying. Like, this is amazing. I watched the introduction of Maul, that like 2 or 3 parter. Didn't do anything for me, man. I just didn't get it. I was like, why is this supposed to be so great? But maybe I needed more of a broader context. So I went back and tried to watch the show from the beginning, and I was bored with it. I just couldn't get into it. I'm trying, you guys, but I can't get into it.
Clone Wars, Captain Logan, or your fake news.
Oh,
you're a fake fan.
Look, I don't know why people keep wanting me to come back and talk about Star Wars. The reason I wait for you when I do, much of the time.
Someone said it'd be cool if Ahsoka showed up. That would actually be really cool. They've pretty much confirmed they're going to be doing a sequel animated series to Rebels that I assume she's going to be involved in based on where she's left at the end of that show. So I don't know if that would conflict with this.
And it would be crazy to see her suddenly cast in live action.
What's that?
It would be wild to see her suddenly cast in live action.
That would be super cool. Yeah, I'd like to see her show up in live action in anything, as long as the story's
and I don't know what the voice actress looks like, so I don't know if that actress could come in and do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. Because
sometimes that works out. Like, sometimes you have the body type and physically you're the right age, and it's just close enough, and you can just reprise your role.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know if she's like a trained screen actress, like physical actress, or if she's just voice acting exclusively. But
Braden Fleming, what was your opinion on Dave Filoni's direction? First of all, I was blown away that name popped up. I was like, oh, cool. I didn't expect to ever see him direct anything live action, and I thought his episodes were really good. I think he did 2. I know he did the first episode, but I don't know what the other one was.
He did the first episode, and what was, in my opinion, the worst episode of the show, which was the Mos Eisley Cantina Tatooine one.
Yeah.
I
mean, the direction in that episode wasn't bad.
I thought it was impressive from a guy that like has only directed animation stuff before to come in and like do some live action stuff and it not feel clunky.
And the sensibilities seem right for it, especially in that first episode, because it has so many special effects.
That's true.
Like there's big grand set pieces in that first episode. And let me back off for a second and say one of the things I like about the show is how small in scope it relatively is to Star Wars, but that it still has some big action. It still feels like a Star Wars thing.
Yeah, I love that they did a like one man takes down a TIE fighter scene at the end of the show. Like that was super cool.
Yep.
Super cool action set piece that we haven't seen in a Star Wars thing before. Like we've had, of course, like, you know, Luke grappling under the walkers in Empire and stuff, but like seeing like a guy with like a cord attached to a flying ship, I was like, this is crazy.
When he turns on his rocket for the first time and he shoots all the way up and he's just like flinging around it like Batman on the back of Batwing in the animated series Batman, or Spider-Man with Green Goblin. I was thinking that. And then, but see, like, I wasn't enjoying that as much as you were, because the entire time I was just thinking, please don't kill off Grand Moff Gus Fring just after we introduced him. And I was 95% sure he was going to climb out of that TIE fighter at the end. When we get to that stinger, I'm like, yes! Just as he starts, I'm like, I know where this is going. And he's going to be the big bad for the second season, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, that's going to be super cool.
Or at least he's got to, right?
It's going to be interesting to see, like, maybe he's Force sensitive. Who knows?
I wondered about that. Well, immediately they're doing so many Vader parallels right away. It's like they're trying to kind of make him the Vader of this show, because it's like immediately after, like he's really intimidating and he's killing all his minions, and then he's flying in his own TIE fighter, and he's got a lightsaber at the end. If he's not Force sensitive, he's even more impressive than I thought he was.
That's true. Yeah.
But like they're really setting him up to be the Darth Vader, and to be but not in like a really obvious derivative way. Like he's a different kind of character, but also I thought that Carl Weathers' character, I guess Grief Karga, I cannot remember that guy's name. I thought he, after the third episode, when he and Mando end up on opposite sides, that he was going to be the Mandalorian's arch nemesis in the show. And when he calls him up again to come help him, I'm like, oh, don't trust him. That's your arch nemesis. And then it turned out he really wasn't supposed to trust him, but then he had reason to trust him later, and it was wonderful. And I bet, like, it's really funny too that he played Apollo Creed, and it's like an Apollo Creed kind of situation with Rocky, right? Where like they're like against each other, and they don't like each other, and they have to fight several times, and then at the end they're like best friends, and like I bet they're gonna be best friends. Well, or does he make it? Does he make it out, or does he die? I can't remember.
He does. He makes it out.
They're gonna be best friends.
The companions who die are the Ugnaught, that's played by Nick Nolte,
and IG-11.
IG-11, the droid Taika Waititi,
really nice sacrificial droid
yeah,
death.
I love that scene.
It's awesome.
That scene was awesome.
And it turns out that the IGs are the perfect model to be nursemaids, because they can hold the baby and then flip their arms around in any direction, except there's one shot where he flips his body back around when people are shooting at him. And I'm like, that seems like a bad idea. Like, turn it back the other way. There's nobody behind you. Why are you doing that? But it seems like the IGs are just, like, actually the perfect nursemaids. And they should all be reprogrammed for that.
One of the things I really liked about this show, speaking of IG-11, is the humor is genuinely charming and not forced and feels natural and brings much needed levity to a show that gets pretty dark and gritty sometimes. I never had one of those like Last Jedi or Marvel humor movie moments where like I'm sitting in the theater and I'm like, oh, the humor is really cringy and just took me out of this experience, you know. This show, I thought, you know, pretty much all the attempts at humor worked for me.
And with Taika Waititi in the show and directing an episode, and it still doesn't have that problem. It's fantastic.
Exactly.
Look, that guy's a great director. I just don't like his one outing for Marvel because of of what I thought was kind of too forced or not well integrated humor. This show doesn't have that problem.
No, it doesn't at all.
I was excited to see his name on something I liked.
Yeah, I watched Jojo Rabbit this past.
I've heard that's great. I just haven't seen it.
I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was very funny. But yeah, I feel like we should probably.
We will. We'll get back to comments, but another big point I wanted to make, real quick, Dan. No, you're fine. Is so I mentioned the Apollo Creed thing. These people love Rocky, like very clearly. They're in love with Rocky. The score is awesome, but weirdly derivative of Rocky.
Interesting.
When that theme initially pops up, dun dun dun. My wife and I just looked at each other. We were like, it's the theme from Rocky, and then when it gets into the bridge, it's the Rocky bridge. We're like, it's just the theme from Rocky, like just repackaged into a Star Wars thing, and it works really well. But it is, and it can't be a coincidence that they have Carl Weathers in this show.
Oh, I wonder. That's interesting.
It can't be. There's no way. But that was the thing I wanted to make sure that I mentioned while I was thinking about it. Let's see. Blue Dragon 5, what did you think about the parallels between Mando and Moff Gideon, and what potential do you see going into season 2? I don't know, did we get enough screen time from him and enough background from him to see like real character parallels?
I mean, I don't remember. I don't think so.
I didn't have an interesting read on that right away, but come back and let me know what you mean by parallels.
I think the interesting parallels for me in the show are the obvious one is the backstory between Mando and Baby Yoda, and like they share a
Yes.
common like being abandoned and like being pursued and almost killed, and then like a stranger rescues them in Mandalorian armor and whisks them away to a life of adventure. I love that aspect of both characters, and I also this is just like a small aside. I loved seeing things from the prequels that were never made into like physical props or used a lot on screen be actual physical moving things. Like the super battle droids are like actually physical in those flashback scenes, and it's so cool. And they look really intimidating in a way that they didn't look in the prequels. It's super cool.
Yeah, and you buy, after as intimidating as that looks, why that guy would not like droids and
Yes.
be kind of freaked out by them and not trust them.
Yeah. That's true. Someone mentioned that he also uses the fork tuning gun that Boba Fett uses in the holiday special. Yes, that is really cool.
How did you feel? This was a question I wanted to ask you, Dan. How do you feel about making? Because this feels like this feels like a thing that I could see somebody complaining about, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. That we do sort of that typical. You don't get one of the big iconic parts of the costume we all know and love until the end of the show. Like he doesn't have the rocket pack the whole show, and there's not really a great reason for it. Like when the lady leader of the Mandalorians gives him that at the end, it's like she just asks if he's been trained in it, and I'm like, seems like everybody else has one. Like, it seems like all the other Mandalorians were trained in it, and I'm not sure why he's not wearing one already.
Well, that's not true, though. I mean, not all Mandalorians wear jetpacks.
Well, I'm just saying we saw a whole bunch of them, like, flying around with them. And so I just, like, I have not seen enough other Star Wars stuff to not get the impression from the show that he's the only one not wearing one. Except for her, she's just forging stuff. So she doesn't really need one, because she's just forging things.
And she was, like, really cool, by the way. Like, her helmet was just, like, super cool looking.
I thought it was neat.
Like, her fight scene was super cool, too.
Yeah, and I thought it was neat that she's wearing pink armor, and I'm not making fun of it.
Yeah.
That didn't seem silly. I didn't even notice it until this watch. I was like, wait a minute, she's got pink armor. And I should be like, that's stupid because she's a girl, so they have to give her pink armor. But somehow it played. I don't know why, but...
Yeah.
She does, though. She has pink armor. She has pink armor and Magneto horns.
She does. That's true. Maybe she'll be an evil villain next season, probably.
I don't think so. She's so in tune with the code and seems to have a morality with that, and doesn't blame the Mandalorian for the death of everyone she knows. Like, if we make that lady a bad guy, I'll be really surprised.
No, I agree. I was just joking, but I hope that she comes back in the second season.
Me too. I'll be surprised if she doesn't, because she represents the order of that and the logic of that whole way of thinking.
This is the way. She's the first person that says it in the show.
Yep. And then we keep getting that over and over again the whole way through. And
that's another classic line that will stick around from the show. It's the best.
It is. Now, I will say, it reminds me, and I don't think it's derivative of this at all, it's just that sort of thing I've seen before. You won't know this reference, Dan, but it reminded me a lot of the Jem'Hadar in Deep Space Nine, with the this is the order of things.
Maybe they were looking at that too. Maybe there's some Star Trek score in there too that they didn't pick up on.
It's entirely possible. I'm gonna have that song stuck in my head for the next 3 weeks, man. I've been going around, ask anybody that lives in my house. I've just been walking around.
I love it too. My favorite part of it is at the beginning where it like starts off. It's like, and then like the bass drops and it's like boom boom. It's so good.
It's great. And I would play it while we were talking, but then we would get copyright flagged.
We're just going to act out songs for the audience the rest of the time.
Woo! One of the things talking about the pink Magneto horned forging lady that I was really impressed with is how the quick flashbacks to the Mandalorian's childhood are handled, because most of the time when we see it, it's when she's working on his armor. We're like really like particular about when we get flashes to that. Whenever, and I don't think that's the only time we see it, but it's really deliberate. If we're working on that armor, he's thinking about the transition from his old self to his new self. He's thinking about that rebirth that he had into becoming the Mandalorian. And when you think about his insistence, even upon thinking he's going to die, of never taking off the helmet, and what it means if he did, and again, just the transition from like the forced growing up from child to Mandalorian wearing that armor. That's when we see the flashbacks. That's great. I love that as a motif.
Yeah, it's like the experience that forged him into the person he is today he's flashing back to it while his new armor is being forged. It's pretty cool.
And see, that's why we have Dan here, so that he can take a thing that it took me like 5 minutes to say and condense it down into like 30 seconds that would fit on a t-shirt and sound far more profound than what I said. Well done.
Yeah, and I like, speaking to the flashbacks as well, I like that his backstory is told mostly without dialogue in very short scenes, but we get the gist of what we're supposed to take from it in terms of his character arc throughout the course of the season.
Exactly.
We don't need like an entire episode where it's like we're introduced to his parents and like we get to know them, and then the droids come, and then the droids chase him outside, and there's explosions, and then they hide him in a little shed thing, and then the droid tries to get him, and then the Mandalorians show up, and they fight the droids, and there's more explosions, and then he gets taken away, and the episode ends.
I'm throwing new Star Trek under the bus real hard on this podcast, but I can't help myself because this is managing so much of what that isn't right, and I wish it would look at this. Picard has this problem, and I guess Discovery does it too, where it keeps opening episodes with like 10 minutes of flashback that don't really give us any new information and are just things that we've already been told about, like more concretely and elegantly in lines of dialogue. It's like, now we're seeing it dramatized for no good reason, just so you guys can get 10 episodes. And watching this makes that so much worse. Like, I keep saying, okay, I'm just going to make the comparison real quick. Dan, I keep saying that my favorite franchise and your favorite franchise are in the same kind of doomed place right now, where both of them are kind of unsalvageable and have added things to the canon that we may never get away from, and that for me to be able to take it seriously again, we're going to have to completely we need new blood to completely retcon just the things that I want retcon, so that will never happen. And then Star Wars gives us the frickin' Mandalorian, so now you guys are like a little bit of a leg up on my franchise. Like, we're both still pretty screwed, but then there's the Mandalorian, you know?
Well, and I'm encouraged by that High Republic initiative that they announced the other day. That's like the new expanded universe initiative that they're doing with the comics and the books. Like, that sounds really cool.
Well, I wish I could say I was encouraged about anything in Star Trek right now, because I'm not.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, we have hope, at least a little bit. And it's looking like the people at Disney are smart enough to like change the guard when the failure is apparent,
and to look at this and go, oh wait, that's more like what Star Wars is. Like, I wish this, because we haven't talked about the tone of this all that much, and how similar it reminds me anyway of original trilogy, and that it's closer to what I like about Star Wars. It just feels more authentic. And again, it's just telling a story, and it's not stopping every 5 minutes to throw out like emotional platitudes and give us speeches about like hope and love and stuff. Like, it's just like Star Wars talked about hope, but it felt like in a more like real world sense of like, we are all gonna die, but this gave us hope, not like a
rebellions are built on hope.
Not like a philosophical paper about what hope is, which is what Discovery keeps doing in Star Trek, and what the new Star Wars films kept doing past Force Awakens. Force Awakens has it a little bit, but not anything like the last two. And so it was just really refreshing not to have that with this. I wish somehow Disney Star Wars could have opened with this or something like it. Like if this had been a 2-hour film and released in the theater, it does not do the numbers Force Awakens does, maybe, except for the fact that it's a new Star Wars thing, so maybe it didn't matter. It didn't matter with Episode 1, but it's not like the next like chapter, you know. So like I don't know if it would have done as well, but they would have laid a better foundation to build on after that. And so I wish somehow that could have happened. This is all in hindsight. That never would have happened.
Well, let's talk about that, because I have based on the way the show is paced, my conspiracy theory is that this used to be a movie and or the Boba Fett movie, and they repurposed it into a TV series. Because rumor has it that Mangold's even going to come in and direct an episode for season 2, which would be amazing. And of course he was the guy that was supposed to do the Boba Fett movie. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was at some point a project they were going to release in the theater as a movie, because the season feels like it has enough content to be a 2-hour movie. I
completely agree with that. I think there's potentially some truth in what you're saying. Here in a second, I will throw the wrench in it where I don't see how that's possible. Mm-hmm. But to your point, I think it's maybe more likely that Favreau came up with this and wanted it to be so authentic Star Wars that what he came up with was a Star Wars movie, and was like, I'm not totally sure how to make it a series like they want. And I think that probably has a lot to do with why some of these episodes are half an hour long. The reason I don't know if this could have initially been the Boba Fett movie is because I don't see how Favreau gets sole credit for creation if that was the case.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
That's the only thing that throws a wrench in that theory. That Favreau wasn't going to write that movie, so Mangold or somebody else would have co-creator credit on this.
Well, the reason why I thought that too was because Pedro Pascal has said that when he was cast in this, he was under the impression he was playing Boba Fett, and then found out later he was playing a different character. So I don't know. I mean, this is just all conjecture, obviously. But I have a feeling that the second season will feel a little bit more even now that they know that they have a direction to go for. In the second season, they have some big lore questions to answer with Yoda's species, the Dark Saber, further exploring Moff Gideon's character. We got some places to go.
Did it bother you that we have this kind of big mystery laid out with Baby Yoda and we're not really given anything about it? Like, I thought that would bug me, and when we get to the end of this and they go, well, now we've got to go take it back to its people and find the Yodas or whatever, it made me kind of more okay with it, because at least it feels like there's a direction. But I guess the deal for me is this doesn't feel like a full season in a way. It almost feels more like we're at a mid-season because of that.
Yeah, it's like a pilot season for a ongoing TV show almost, which it kind of is, I guess.
Yeah. Which is okay.
Yeah. I like I said, I quite enjoyed this.
Because I'm not saying they didn't get anything done.
No, of course not.
And I don't want to complain too much that it's short, because just for my own selfish purposes, it let me watch it again for this. It's kind of nice to have some shortest. Like I said, I want to see more stuff like The Tick, where you could watch half a season in a single evening if you wanted to.
Yeah.
This is only 6 hours long. I mean, that's really nice.
I hope in the future that now that they know they're a series, they can use the real estate and make the episodes a little bit longer, flesh things out a little bit more, make it a little bit more arcy.
Yeah.
That's my hope, but I mean, who knows what tact they'll take moving forward. We shall see.
Well, Matthew Bass wanted us to talk about, that's a good segue, the show's episodic approach, and if we think more streaming shows should follow this example. I seem more happy about that than you are, and I think a lot of the reason is just because of other shows I can't help but compare it to, like the Star Trek shows, and like the old Netflix Marvel shows and stuff, where in not doing more singular episodes, because you can do both, right? You can even have a show where you kind of have singular episodes where there's sort of at least a story arc within the episode, but it's also propelling the main story forward, so you probably wouldn't want to watch it out of sequence, but it still felt like of a piece, right? This sometimes does that and sometimes doesn't, and so it'll be curious to see if it's more consistent about that in the second season. But I found it refreshing because a lot of shows lately, like I said earlier, have fallen into this pit where they don't have any sense of structure where like it's just fill time for an hour. It doesn't feel like the episode is an episode. It doesn't feel like a chapter. These are chapters, like they're called chapters, and it kind of fits that. For the most part. I also really appreciated it with this material because it feels more like that original Star Wars idea of the film serial. And it's a good thing that it wasn't all dropped at once, because having to wait week to week gives you more of that serial feel, and being as short as they are really gives you that serial feel. They don't all, I don't know why I keep saying Phil, they don't all end on cliffhangers like an old film serial would,
right?
But it still kind of has that, like, these could have almost been released in the theater in front of something on like a week-to-week basis, which I think is really cool.
They could have released like episodes of this in front of the Star Wars movies. I mean, like, they would have shown up the movie that they were in front of in quality by like leaps and bounds.
Yeah,
but people would have gotten to see something cool that, you know, are just like casual people that go to see Star Wars when it's in the theater or something, you know. Which I saw when the show premiered. Some people got the opportunity to watch like the first 3 episodes in the theater, and that must have been a really cool experience. They had like fan screenings and stuff for people.
Yeah. Well, and this was big screen worthy, right? Like,
oh, absolutely.
You absolutely could have put this in IMAX or something, and, you know, done the thing that Marvel attempted to do with the Humans, but it was actually, like, you know, worth it. It would have been great.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that feels like a TV show about it is it sort of plays to its strengths too. Like the action scenes, the set pieces, the plot of the show, it's very small scale and down to earth. But I think that's what I want.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, like it doesn't go to like the Emperor raising an entire fleet of Star Destroyers out of the ground because they can't afford to do that. And I say, good. Please.
Because you have a little bit of the art through adversity thing where they can't shoot for the moon and do anything they want to. At the same time, it is a show that could only exist now and probably only with Disney money, right? Like,
yes.
when Eric and I talked about the pilot, he wasn't as impressed with the production values of the show as I was, just because he said, well, of course it's got production values. It's Disney, and Eric is very on against Disney right now. And I said, well, yeah, okay, you're right about that. However, they're using those resources well. Like, there's stuff in...
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Disney put out stuff with high budgets that looks terrible. I think
there's stuff in some of the new Star Wars movies.
Really great job. Like, it's very impressive.
I think there's CG in some of the new Star Wars movies that's not super well integrated because they're just doing too much on the screen at once, and they're...
Everything's so dense.
Yeah, and with this, they're just focusing really hard on the one thing in a frame that they want to look really good. And so, like I said, it could only exist now. It's really easy to go, well, these days you can make, for instance, a speeder chase look realistic in a way you couldn't back in 81, 82, but... And that's true, but we're also doing it on TV, and it looks better than it ever has, and so that's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think some of the portrayal, like the thing I really liked about the show is that it portrays a lot of the like old school alien races that we see in the original trilogy in like modern makeup and costuming and all that, and they look amazing. I don't know. I was really impressed with everything.
People are in the comments making fun of the rebellions are built on hope thing that you were talking about earlier. I loved that this show, or this is my opinion, I think they got away with it. I think the show gets away with Carl Weathers saying, "I'm your only hope." I think they did, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, no, and he says it in a way where like he's such a He's such a like morally ambiguous character and like doesn't care about anything but money and himself, that him saying that is kind of funny, you know?
We have a few...
You said that, I chuckled a little bit, you know?
Oh, yeah, no, it's great. It feels kind of self-aware about it.
Exactly.
Is there any place in this entire show where anybody says, I have a bad feeling about this? I don't remember it.
There's a lot of line repeating in the Tatooine episode, which is one of the things I didn't like about it.
Okay.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but they use a lot of like old Boba Fett lines, like "as you wish" and stuff like that.
Oh, see, I missed that because I don't remember that stuff as well as you do.
Yeah. So like that episode like had me cringing a lot because it was like, oh, this is just like this is what I would have expected the people that made like Rise of Skywalker to make into a Mandalorian TV show. It's just like, do you remember these things? Like,
Well, and I think we could argue about whether or not it does that in certain cases with different things, right? Like,
yeah,
there's a fine, and I'm with you. Some of that you're absolutely right about. It didn't bother me as much as you, but I think some of it I didn't notice because I'm not as big of a Star Wars guy as you are, and
yeah, that's fair.
I probably. The thing is, that's the movie that I rewatched the least because it's my least favorite. So like, I don't go back to that one that much. But or are you talking about Empire?
Uh, Sorry, what? What movie are we talking about?
When you're talking about repeating lines, are we talking about Jedi or are we talking about Empire?
Empire. That's where Boba Fett gets most of his lines.
See, okay,
Yeah.
so even though I've watched that movie more than I've watched any of them, I still didn't remember that immediately, and I forgot which movie it came from. So yeah, but now that you say that, I remember where it is.
One of the
Yeah.
one of the other things, there's just like a bunch of like fan servicey things in it that like the line repeating thing was the thing that bothered me the most, and like the revisiting the Mos Eisley Cantina, I was like, all right, like this just feels like a really small galaxy at this point. Like everyone goes to the Mos Eisley Cantina, you know.
Also, it's a big. I mean, planets are large. It's like just
Yeah.
because you go to Tatooine, you have to go to the same town in Tatooine.
Well, like Tatooine is like sparsely populated, so I guess
Okay,
like maybe
okay.
there would be like, the one big population center or whatever. But regardless, I was just thinking like, oh, like we couldn't have just done this on a different planet or something. And then like there's subtler things like when he goes into the place where the Imperials are, their like secret base, like that eye thing pops out. That's the thing that inspects C-3PO and R2-D2 before they go into Jabba's palace and Return of the Jedi. I was like, why would the Imperials have that on a random door? Like it's a thing from Jabba's palace. I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah, and see, when it's contrived like that, it feels like you're just doing it for the sake of fan service. But in other places, it's just, these are Star Wars things. Like, if you avoid doing anything we've seen before, now we're going to complain that it feels generic and it's not Star Wars. Like, it's a difficult line to walk, certainly. One of the big things, and I feel like we probably should mention this, just because this seems like a thing everybody was talking about when the first episode came out. Yeah. One of the big things people complained about was doing the carbonite thing.
Yeah, that was kind of weird to me just because they talk about it in Empire like it's a very dangerous thing that no one's tried before. Like no one's ever tried to put a person and like they think Han Solo is going to die. And in the Mandalorian, he has like a whole row of people frozen in carbonite. Like it's like a common knowledge thing bounty hunters do, which is like freeze people in carbonite. Which like is kind of stupid. But
see, I initially thought it was stupid too. And then I thought, and I don't know if I'm just like taking up for it because I like the show, because there's other things that I'm with you where it feels too fan servicey. But like playing devil's advocate for a minute, it's this does take place far enough after that. It's possible it became standard. Like when we found out that it wasn't as dangerous as we thought it was, it worked that one time. Maybe we kept trying it, and then now it's like a standard thing people do. Maybe, yeah, that's because
possible.
if it did work, it would make sense to do that, because then you don't have to worry about things like the guy running off pretending like he's trying to find the toilet, but really he's trying to escape or kill you. And then I wondered, how come he let the guy get that far? Why didn't he just put him in the carbonite as soon as he got in the ship? That was the bigger issue I had with that. I was like, why did you let him? It's like he's there just to be comic relief for 5 seconds, so we'll think he's going to be a main character, and then he's not, and like that's the only reason he's there. Like, if you're the Mandalorian, as soon as you go on that ship, you freeze him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be... I don't know. I'm with you that it's... there could be a potential explanation. To me, without the explanation, it's kind of stupid, but like it didn't take me out. It didn't take me out of the show enough to like not enjoy it, you know. And
I will say, at first it did, because I was afraid that early that the whole show was going to be like that.
Yeah, true. But they did enough stuff, like you said, of taking older Star Wars things and integrating them in a way that's like feels natural and like a part of the universe. Like having one of the supporting characters be an Ugnaught, which is just like the like background minions on Cloud City and Empire. Like that's cool. Like getting to see one of those characters and like what they're like, the way they speak, you know, that sort of thing. Like I
assumed they were just thuggish and didn't talk.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you didn't read a ton of EU stuff, that's kind of what they do in Empire. They're just like, oh, let's, you know, shoot 3PO and all that stuff.
And then we turn one into like this really noble, kind of tragic character.
Yeah.
And he's immediately one of my favorite characters in Star Wars now. Like,
yeah, he's great. I Have Spoken is the best.
yeah, and you can't argue with it. Like, every time he says that, he's either right or just is making a lot of sense, you know?
Yeah. He's like the Yoda of Mando. Like he's the one that kind of teaches him to have a bit more of a moral code and all of that stuff, which in terms of like caring about himself, I mean, of course he adheres to the warrior's code, but he still like kills people for money as his profession, you know? And I feel like he sort of shakes him out of that apathy a little bit and shows him that there's something more to life than that, you know?
We are over an hour. There are a few super chats that I didn't notice, so we'll go ahead and hit those in a second. Somebody a minute ago, Dan, asked, or a little while ago, that was a sentence, asked us how we felt about the whole Baby Yoda thing, and if Baby Yoda annoys us. Some people in the comments are talking like Baby Yoda's kind of annoying. And we should talk about how we feel about that whole thing. I think Baby Yoda is surprisingly believable and realistic as an infant, being a father of 3 myself. I have a baby that is about of the age that they're playing Baby Yoda in this. Of course, he's supposed to be 50. The notion of a species, of an infant of a species evolving this slowly is really interesting to me, and I don't not believe it, but I'm having a very hard time getting my mind around it.
I love Baby Yoda. I think Baby Yoda is awesome. Not just because of how cute he is in the show, and I agree with you that, like, I think one of the reasons why he's resonated so much with people is because, like, he does act like a real kid.
Yeah.
I like the place he has in the story. I like that Baby Yoda is going to be sort of Mando's awakening into a larger world, the way Obi-Wan describes it, like the world of the Force and all of that. Like, that will be really interesting to see, because in the EU, the one thing that we did know about Yoda's race is they had some sort of like special connection to the Force that was unique to their race. So like, almost all of them are extremely Force sensitive.
So does that make it not too much of a leap that he's able to do the stuff that he can do that early, like without training?
Yes, exactly.
Because I haven't heard anyone complain about that, but I was going to ask you if that was a problem for you, and if maybe other Star Wars fans were complaining about it, because you talked when we did the review on Rise of Skywalker, how super advanced Force heal is, and that's a thing the kid can do.
Yeah, it didn't bother me because I knew all that stuff about Yoda's race and stuff. So I wasn't that didn't bother me at all. I really liked, I have to say, the Force is used in such a way in the show, in a way that reminds me of the original trilogy, where it's like subtle magic that like these beings use every once in a while, and it's not like the solution to every problem, and like we don't have people doing like 8 backflips, and like it's very low key, just like everything else in the show, and I really liked that about it too. As far as like the public reaction to Baby Yoda, I celebrate people liking Star Wars that's good and like being united about it. So like people seem to like be a little annoyed about how like popular Baby Yoda is, but like I don't know, I don't care if people want to like it, they like it. I agree with them, so I don't know.
It's not like the porg thing where it's like, oh, it's just these, you know, cute
but
things that they're probably going to throw.
Did anyone actually like porgs that like Star Wars? Like, did anyone actually do like?
There was that look how cute it is thing before the movie came out, and then I think that died down after. This was obviously all during the show because they didn't really sell this on Baby Yoda. Well, they couldn't because he's a reveal at the end of that first episode. And by the way, I think the Baby Yoda reveal is so important for keeping people tuned in, because I think a lot of people were probably, and this was a big reason that we always had to have Force stuff and Jedi really prominently featured in all the Star Wars movies, even the Star Wars story movies. I think a lot of people need that side of Star Wars to care, where it's like it can't just be the bounty hunters. And guys like you probably would be fine with just a bounty hunter story. But to get the general public watching that, there's got to be some kind of connection to the Force. Or at least I'm sure that was their thinking in doing that. And I like the compromise that is struck with that, where it's like, we're not going to have a constant... we're not going to have, like, a Force user there that's constantly wielding a lightsaber or moving stuff around with their mind. We're just going to, like you said, open up the world from the perspective of this guy that doesn't even know that exists. I think that is absolutely the classiest way to handle that, so that it still is very much a bounty hunter show. But we don't forget we're in Star Wars, because, after all, if the Force is not anywhere at all, it's not going to feel as much like a Star Wars thing to at least lay people.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see like what kind of tact we take with Baby Yoda moving forward, in the sense that I have a feeling Baby Yoda will have things to teach Mando about himself, obviously, and I have a feeling that it's going to result in him like questioning the Mandalorian code. Hopefully we delve more into that, and maybe it'll like have him question his convictions, seeing the way that Yoda's race conducts themselves and stuff. I think that could be potentially really interesting.
I'm hoping that he doesn't rapidly mature. That's a worry I have. Because a lot of shows with children, especially really young children that audiences kind of grab onto, like to come up with some kind of contrivance to turn them into teenagers. This happens in a lot of stuff. Star Trek did it, Angel did it, everything does this. I'm a little concerned that they're going to go, okay, it takes 50 years for a baby Yoda to get out of babyhood, and then poof, they're big Yoda. And I'm really hoping we don't do that.
Yeah. I'm of two minds about it. Like, I would like to have... based on like the lifespan of Yoda's species, like when Yoda dies in Return of the Jedi, he's about, I think, like 900 years old.
He's like biblical age. He's like Noah's age.
Yeah, so I don't know how long it takes to get to like you can talk and like walk and be a sentient like person with their species. But I would like to eventually see what a Force-sensitive Yoda like being raised by a Mandalorian is like when they grow up. That's really fascinating. I hope we see that at some point. Yes. Maybe not in this show, but like I'd love to see that.
That's the thing, is if you do it in this show, either the show's got to be on for a stupid amount of time, and that's not going to happen, or
100 years.
Yeah, or you have time jumps, and I don't know that I want that necessarily. Or you're going to have to contrive some way to get him older fast.
Well, and of course, like, we do have the ticking clock of the Mandalorian being like a normal human being, so like he has a regular lifespan. Yep. So like we can't time jump too far, like because nobody wants to watch the elderly Mandalorian show. I mean, I'd watch that, but
what I'm saying is you could time jump 5 or 10 years and just say, well, the way puberty works for Yoda's species is they're a baby for a long time and then suddenly they're a teenager.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
And I don't know. Like, I'm with you. I would like to see that relationship, but with what they've established, I'm leery of the notion of just jumping ahead like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a question. Yeah. Okay, let's do these super chats real quick. Bag Studios. I feel like the show got very overrated. It's good, but it didn't blow me away. I felt it was a missed opportunity to have Yoda save Mando as a kid. What do you think of that?
Yoda save Mando as a kid.
Yeah, and I don't know if he means Yoda or Baby Yoda. He says to have Yoda save Mando as a kid too. Like when he was a kid, Yoda shows up, or Baby. I feel like that would have been really kind of contrived and kind of lame if that's what we'd done. But I'm not totally sure what you're asking for. Sorry, what?
I don't know what he's talking. Maybe he's talking about like how Baby Yoda saves Mandalorian from that like giant beast thing he's fighting to try to get the egg. Is that what he's talking about?
I mean, that is the place where he saves him, so probably.
I mean, that didn't bother me. As far as the
but I think what he's saying is that he wanted there to be some sort of symmetry where like he got saved by the Yoda when he was a kid, also. I think is what he's saying.
That would be dumb. I don't want to see that. That would be really stupid.
I think that's what he's saying. I'm not sure.
As far as the show being overrated, I guess I kind of see what you're saying. In terms of like the initial reactions, I think people were like really excited to get something at the outset when the show started that was like good Star Wars and wasn't the trash that they're putting out in the sequel trilogy movies. So I think people were excited, especially, and it of course helped that the first 3 episodes were really good. That sort of goodwill seems to have carried like throughout the entire show. I don't think the show is ultimately as good as people thought it was going to be at the outset. It certainly isn't as good as I thought and was hoping it would be. But I still, at the end of the day, think it's very enjoyable. So.
Yeah, I don't think it's a masterpiece or anything. I think it's super solid. Am I enjoying it more than I would be if it was such a stark contrast in story quality between this and recent Star Wars movies? Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably to some degree. All things are relative, right? So, and this is a criticism I've been hearing about a lot of things lately, where things that are pretty good are being received as masterpieces because the general quality and general standards of things seem lower than they ought to be. Like, that's a criticism I keep hearing lobbed at things. Like, maybe Joker doesn't get nominated for Oscars if it comes out 20 years ago or whatever. I get that. And I think that is true to some degree. I try to take things as case by case as possible, but obviously I am still influenced by whatever I'm looking at. So yeah, I probably like this more than I would if I liked the last couple Star Wars movies more than I did. But also, if other TV looked like this at all. Like, again, this is filling a void. It's not that it's brilliant for me, it's that it's solid and there's nothing else like it. And I need more stuff that I can watch with my kids. Yeah. So, like, that affects me a lot. That's a big thing for me, is, like, my wife won't watch modern TV hardly. And she just adored the show. And I don't get to watch stuff with my wife and with my kids. So
that's awesome.
That certainly was an influence on my enjoyment of it.
And I think, like, the void that it's filling in terms of, like, in a different way, too, is, I mean, look at the box office of The Force Awakens and even, like, the opening weekends of Rise of Skywalker and Last Jedi. I mean, like, there's an appetite for Star Wars. People want to see good Star Wars. So I think it fills a void in just, like, being the face of goodwill of the Star Wars brand at this point. I don't know. It's I tend to think it's an overall good thing for the Star Wars brand and fandom and all that.
Well, and if it has to be more hyped than maybe it deserves at the face of it, for me, all the better, because maybe Disney will learn the right lessons from it in making more Star Wars down the road. Like, if this has to be like you know, overly positively influential, that's fine with me, because we need stuff at least of this caliber.
Yes, I agree.
In my opinion. Connor says, I also think a lot of the hype can be attributed to the excitement surrounding the drop of Disney Plus. That's true. I mean, they were really smart to make this the first thing, the new thing that they dropped with Disney Plus. I don't like that it's probably not going to get a physical release, but...
See, I guess I'm out of the loop because I don't get excited for streaming services, but was that like a big... And I'm like, I'm a Marvel and a Star Wars fan, but not really like a hardcore like Disney fan. So like, were people really hyped about the release of Disney Plus other than Mandalorian? Like, that's the thing. I was excited about Disney Plus because of Mandalorian, not the other way around. But maybe the other people had a different experience. I don't know.
Well, absolutely, because it came with initially a really good set of launch titles. Nearly Disney's, not all of it, but nearly their entire animated catalog was there, which is unprecedented. Like, they don't even keep all that stuff in print. Disney makes a big deal out of the Disney Vault, so there's only ever a few movies that you can even go buy. And so for Disney to suddenly drop this streaming service, and for a monthly fee and lower than a lot of other fees, you actually have access to most of that database, that was a big deal for people.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool then. I'm not in the Disney fan loop, so I didn't know that was a thing.
And there were also a lot of things that haven't gotten releases physically and that are older and obscure and nobody's talked about in a long time. And then a lot of cartoon stuff, because there's, of course, a bunch of Disney animation fans, and they put a lot of that stuff up that hasn't been released in forever or never has been. And then, obviously, all the Marvel stuff, because there was no place to stream any of that 90s Fox stuff for like 5 or 6 years after Hulu dropped it. And stuff like that. So,
well, cool.
So yeah, that was a lot of it.
I'm glad other people were excited, because as soon as The Mandalorian ended, I canceled my Disney Plus. Like, as soon as I finished the episode, it was like, take my credit card off of this.
Yeah, I use it quite a bit for stuff.
Oh, that's good.
TH1,
and you have kids too, so it's more designed for you.
Precisely, yeah. TH1, both The Mandalorian and Rogue One have been fairly well received. What did they do right that made them so good?
I feel like Rogue One's a bit of a different case, because Rogue One is a movie I like.
This is better than Rogue One.
I think it's way better than Rogue One, because there's characters in the show that are like memorable for reasons aren't just like one-off moments where they like do cool things or like have a witty line.
And the action's not so overblown.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I'm not saying Rogue One's like a bad movie or anything. But I think the reason why those two things have been more successful is because they feel like they're made by people that like are like Star Wars fans. Like Rogue One has Saw Gerrera, which is a character from Clone Wars in it. We visit some planets and stuff from the expanded universe. The Empire is treated like a serious threat. They're not like goofballs like the First Order is, who are like completely incompetent. Like this stuff like feels like Star Wars. And the same thing with The Mandalorian. Like it has goofy humor in it, but it also takes place in a very dangerous, dark, and gritty universe, which is what Star Wars is. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people say like Star Wars is just a dumb space wizard movie for kids, and like it's not. It is more than that, and it takes place in a world that's very like dangerous and dark, despite the fact that it does have silly things in it, you know. So I think
that's the juxtaposition that made it so original.
Exactly. And I think that's what these two projects have touched on more than anything else, is like the tone and the reverence for not just like the original trilogy of films, because I feel like the sequel trilogy has been a lot of like reverence for those movies, like to the point where they like didn't get the same director to work on all of them initially because they wanted to replicate the feel of the original movies.
Yeah. Look how that worked out.
Yeah, the spin-off stuff feels a lot more like expanded universe stuff I like, which I enjoy more than like seeing the original trilogy like retold or repackaged and all of that stuff. Not that Last Jedi was that. I mean, they at least tried to deviate, and I don't think it worked out all that well. But anyway,
the big difference, however, between Rogue One and the show is even though there has not been much merchandising for this yet, when there is, people will buy it.
Yes.
Nobody cared about the Rogue One stuff. It sat on the shelves forever. And I don't mean just Baby Yoda, man. Like, people like these characters. I like these characters. I could see myself buying some stuff from this. I love Creel. Or Queel rather. I like the bad guy in this a lot. Like I can see people going out and buying the stuff from this movie. Wouldn't it be really weird looking at the numbers? This is so funny. Looking at the numbers when they put out an IG-11 action figure, because it will look identical to the other IG figure that nobody bought, but people will buy this.
They will, and I think the way you could distinguish it is like give them like the little Baby Yoda sack strapped to the front of them. Be super cute.
Yeah.
Be awesome.
What's really funny is, so there hasn't been, they've been making a big deal out of we're not putting out merchandise for this yet. And I don't know totally what the strategy is there, except they haven't been able to move Star Wars merchandise yet. They were just worried they wouldn't be able to.
I think Lucasfilm is the equivalent of someone in a kitchen that just lit their hair on fire and is running around and doesn't know what to do. Like, I mean, that's the only possible explanation, that they didn't have merchandise ready for the most popular Star Wars character that they created so far for the holiday season that they came out. Like,
Baby Yoda would have been Tickle Me Elmo again, and they know it, and they are hitting themselves in the face with the proverbial frying pan that you're talking about. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And
but what I was going to say
myself,
is, the only thing I've seen are posters, and the only posters that have come out for the most part are Baby Yoda posters. If you go to Walmart right now, there's like 3 different Baby Yoda posters.
I do have a sweatshirt and a t-shirt from The Mandalorian. Those are like the 2 things I've seen that I have purchased. I know that they already announced they're going to do
Pops.
like they're doing Pops, and then like of course they're doing like the Hot Toys figures and all that stuff.
Okay,
There's some really cool ones from that show that they're doing. They're doing like the big infantry Mandalorian guy with the big guns as a Hot Toys figure, which is like super cool.
Yeah. If I bought one thing, it would probably be the Grand Moff, just because I love that
He's
actor
cool.
so much, and he grew a mustache for it.
Well, and I think you might have the opportunity, if he's as big of a character as they make him out to be in season 2, like you might get a whole bunch of merchandise for him. I'm sure if
I keep saying Grand Moff. He's just a Moff, right?
Yeah, he's just a Moff.
Is Grand like the one at the top of all the Moffs? Is that how that works?
So
because I don't know that.
The Grand Moffs are like governors of sectors of Imperial territory.
Oh, there is more than one of them. Okay.
That's why, like in A New Hope, they use Grand Moff and Governor Tarkin interchangeably, because they're the same thing. I don't know why, but that's the explanation we've been given in like extra stuff. Of course, I'm sure when they were filming A New Hope, George Lucas was like, "Oh, just say Governor or say Grand Moff here or whatever." Like they didn't think about it at all. And I believe Moff is like a governor of like a smaller division of that territory, if I remember correctly. But I'm not 100% sure of the hierarchy. I do know that Grand Moff means Imperial Governor, though.
This has nothing to do with anything, but for whatever reason, you just reminded me. I think just go back to A New Hope. You just reminded me of a point I wanted to make earlier, which is we were talking about Cara Dune and how we weren't totally sure about her actress, but I was saying on paper I thought she was really good. I loved the reveal that she was from Alderaan.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I don't know if anybody else caught that, but like I didn't notice it first viewing, and watching it today, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
That's why she hates the Empire to the degree that she does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. No, that was really good.
Cool stuff.
Noah gives us a $10 super chat. Thanks a bunch, buddy. This show is hands down the best Disney-produced piece of Star Wars content. I agree with that.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with that too.
I'm glad.
I still maintain that I like Rogue One and Force Awakens pretty well, but...
Me too, but for me, I always said Force Awakens lives or dies by the second and third act, and so I can't be as nice to it as I used to. And then Rogue One, we've already said both of us like this a couple times more than that. So
yeah, that's true. So I would definitely put it over those 2 things.
By default, it is.
I mean, to be honest, like I quite enjoy Solo too for what it is. I mean, I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think the
I didn't
2
hate
things.
That movie. I don't have any reason to ever see it again, but.
That's fair. I mean, the only 2 Disney Star Wars things that I think are just like abhorrently awful are Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. I mean, they are just, oh boy. But anyway,
I don't like what little I saw of Star Wars Resistance. I'll say that. But...
I didn't bother watching that show.
Yeah, that wasn't for me.
I
don't know who they made that for.
It looked like it was for me. I mean, like 5-year-old children that watched it, maybe they enjoyed it, but that looked like the audience they were skewing towards. So I didn't bother. I was like, oh, they're not making a show for me, so I'm not going to complain that they made a show for 5-year-olds and it should be like gritty or something. I don't
know. He goes on to say, I'm glad that both fans and critics of the sequel film can find common ground in liking the show.
Yeah, and I mean, like I think people that don't like the sequels and the people that do like them can have common ground about those too. Like I don't think anyone that's in either of those camps agrees that like absolutely everything in those movies is terrible or absolutely everything in them is amazing. Like there are scenes in Last Jedi I really like. There are ideas in that movie I really like if they were executed well.
Well, we've talked about this 100 times. My biggest, a lot of the reason that I don't like that movie is that it kept setting up things from like, ooh, this could get really interesting, and then immediately deflate it for me in the next scene. So yes, lots of great ideas that they seconds later totally decimated for me.
And even like some like I just what they did with Kylo, I won't go into it here, but I think like the character arc that they embarked on with Kylo Ren was like real. It made a lot of sense from where they left him at the end of The Force Awakens, and I would have liked that to continue into Rise of Skywalker, but they completely abandoned it.
Yep.
Anyway.
Because I think you've agreed with me when I've said that if only they ended that movie at the third act before you get to acts 4 and 5, then that movie, as its own piece, is a lot better.
Yeah, I think they probably should have ended it with the Ray, I want you to join me thing, and then leave us on a cliffhanger.
They're in the throne room, or even they I want you to join me, and then you wait for a minute, and you think they might go to credits. And then they turn around and they start fighting together, and that's when you go to credits. That also would have been a way to end
That'd
it.
be pretty cool. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, you could edit it right now. Like, just with what they made, you could do it. But anyway. Well, folks, we did hit an hour and a half, which I kind of didn't think would happen with this material, but I cannot say I have nothing to say and then not talk forever, so.
And, I mean, it's us talking about a Star Wars thing. We usually have a decent amount of stuff to say. I have to say... I don't know. There were a couple of people who mentioned the new season of Clone Wars in here, and I did resubscribe to Disney Plus to watch that, but I haven't watched any of the new episodes yet. So,
well, as I said earlier, I've never watched that whole show, so I'm not going to do that right away because I won't know what's going on.
People who like the show seem to be really enjoying it. So
yeah, that's what I've been seeing.
That means you probably won't enjoy it because you don't agree with those people.
I want to know if it is at all an age thing. I really do. I want to know how many Star Wars fans, and of course I've always said I'm a very casual Star Wars fan, I want to know how many Star Wars fans my age are Clone Wars fans, and how much of that was just that show was after my time. Because it seems to appeal to the sensibilities of kids that grew up 10 years younger than me, like some other stuff that I just have never really been able to get into because it was kind of after my time.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like... rooted as far as you possibly can in the prequels, and be good. So, I mean, if you're not a fan of the prequel stuff, I can see why that wouldn't be, the first thing you'd want to watch. But as someone that grew up during the prequel era and liked a lot of the lore and expanded universe stuff that came out during the time when those movies were being released, and I, as a kid, I found those movies to be entertaining, and I liked the Tartakovsky Samurai Jack dude. I don't know how to pronounce his name. The Clone Wars series he made.
Yeah, that's his name. No, it's awesome.
Yeah, so I was like, I find things to enjoy in it, but it's not for everybody, obviously.
Well, and I didn't hate what I liked. It's just people like.
It's just like, well, you weren't over the moon about it like a lot of people.
I thought it was good cartoon stuff. I didn't think it was like really compelling storytelling the way people have talked about it.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I also have only really sampled it. Mm-hmm. So this is not me reviewing that show. I've not seen enough of it. But
have a stance, you fence-sitter.
But
do you hate it or do you love it? You must have an extreme opinion about things you haven't even watched.
Okay, fine. It sucks, Dan. No, I don't know. I've not spent enough time with it. But I just couldn't get excited about it. There wasn't enough there for me that made me compelled to keep watching. So maybe I would get to that place if I forced myself to keep watching. But then you're breaking one of my cardinal rules of storytelling, which is nobody cares about your story, which I guess it's Star Wars, so they do. But you see what I'm saying.
Well, and the tough thing with Clone Wars too is like, it's such an archy show that like doesn't move through time linearly. Like you'll flash to like arcs that like take place like years before each other during the war and stuff. So, it's not like a show you can just like sit down and like binge and like get like a coherent like narrative watching the shows like all of them in order. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like a I like this. Like there are episodes in Clone Wars like I think are like really boring. That like in the first season, there's a ton of Jar Jar Binks episodes where like he's like negotiating like treaties and stuff, and you're like, why did they make this? Like,
well, and that's one of those things where I keep wondering if maybe I should just skip a season.
Yeah, I mean,
or
like,
if there's stuff there that I just have to have.
You can skip large portions of the episodes in like many of the seasons and get just the good stuff. I may
have to just look up a list of like key issues or something.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
That's a thing real quick that I wanted to say about this show that I really appreciated is that it actually weirdly, even though I'm praising it for being such a good kind of throwback to movie serials, I thought it binged better than it watched week to week. which I'm really surprised I'm saying, but like those episodes in the middle that you didn't care for, I liked them better watching it all together. But I think part of that might be because I knew where it was all going.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. My perception was definitely colored by the fact that I was so interested in what the Imperials wanted with Baby Yoda that I was like, when are we going to get back to the story that I was interested in, guys? Knowing where it all goes, maybe I'd enjoy them more. That's definitely a possibility.
Okay, well, anybody that really, because people are giving me advice in the comments, anybody that really knows that show and wants to tell me what things you think I will probably be bored by and can get away with skipping, feel free to send me an episode list and I'll take a look at it and consider finally watching a condensed version of that show. And it might be a thing like TNG where after I've seen enough of it that I really like it, it's then worth going back. But I need something to propel me forward in that show. I'm having a hard time getting past Impulse. I need something to get me to warp so that I'm actually watching that show.
Warp speed. Warp.
Well, anyway, thanks so much for watching, everybody.
Control warp speed.
Worf is the tactical officer, so it's whoever is flying the ship at the time, which is sometimes Wesley Crusher and sometimes some random person so that we can kill them while they're sitting in that chair, because we do that quite a bit in TNG.
Well, this time it was Worf.
And in the first season, it's Geordi because it was thought, the Roddenberry thought that it would be clever to have the blind guy flying the ship. That's why they did that.
Geordi. Go to warp speed.
Dan, was there anything else about The Mandalorian that you wanted to absolutely make sure that you said? Before I cut you off.
I don't think so. I'm going to be interested to see what other people thought of the show, if people think it's overrated, if they are annoyed by Baby Yoda, or they love it. We shall see.
Well, you guys were great. Thanks a ton for hanging out with us. I hope you had a good time. Leave your comments. Let us know how you felt about The Mandalorian. And in the meantime, Dan and I are going to go ahead and get going. And hopefully Dan will be back again in the not-too-distant future for something else. He's busy trying to be a lawyer. People at the beginning of the show were, before we started, Dan, were saying that after you graduate, you should be my lawyer. And my response to that was, I hope I don't need one. That's...
No. Everyone needs one eventually, at some point.
Dan, I don't want to be too forward. I don't want to be too forward, but would you be my lawyer?
Well, I'd have to take, I don't know, whatever Kansas accepts for the bar exam, if they're UB or not. I would have to be licensed to practice in your state. So that could be a hurdle.
I didn't think of that. I'm not going to move to Boston just so that you can be my lawyer. I was trying to figure out a way to make it seem like a proposal.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
I was trying to make that like a marriage proposal. Like, Dan, would you be my lawyer?
You could have like one of those ring boxes with like a piece of paper that I have to sign in it, like legal documents. Like, will you do this?
I can't believe you do. You got on one knee to ask me to be your lawyer.
If only people were that gracious. They're never that gracious. And they shouldn't be. That's a little much.
No, but it's hilarious.
But their threshold of gratefulness could be greater. It could be higher.
I can't wait to hear you talk more about that at some point. Anyway, thanks a lot. Maybe that should be an After Dark topic. Issues Dan has with the way people treat lawyers.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Everybody, thanks a lot for watching, and we will see you again shortly with more videos here on Geekvolution. I was Captain Logan. This was Dan Torrey.
I was Dan.
See you later, folks.
Goodbye.